Let's work through a couple more evaluations. First, let's take a look at tan of 5 pi by 6. So the first thing we want to do is try to figure out where 5 pi by 6 is on the xy plane. We know that this angle measure from here to here is 6 pi by 6, which means 5 pi by 6 must be somewhere in quadrant 2. So let's go ahead and mark that in quadrant 2. That's going to give us an angle down here of pi by 6. We know that if we think of this length as length 1, then this point here is going to lie on the unit circle, which means that the x-coordinate of this point is going to be cosine 5 pi by 6, and the y-coordinate of this point is going to be sine of 5 pi by 6. Now we know that tangent is the y-coordinate over the x-coordinate, or in our case sine 5 pi by 6 all over cosine of 5 pi by 6. So what we'd like to do is relate this point on our unit circle to this point here in quadrant 1 that has a similar reference angle of pi by 6. Well, you can see that the y-coordinates here should be similar. This tells us that sine of 5 pi by 6 should be equivalent to sine of pi by 6. However, notice that the x-coordinate here is negative and the x-coordinate over here is positive. So that means that cosine of 5 pi by 6 is the negative of cosine pi by 6. We know that sine of pi by 6 is 1/2, and we know that cosine of pi by 6 is root 3 over 2, and we're going to negate this value to get negative root 3 over 2. And of course, when we simplify here, we should get negative 1 over the square root of 3, or negative root 3 over 3. And we can double check that the sign of our final answer does indeed make sense. We were working on 5 pi by 6, which is here in quadrant 2. It's only the sine function here that's exclusively positive. So we do expect our final answer here, because we're evaluating a tangent, to be negative. The last evaluation we're going to look at is cosine of negative 5 pi by 3. Now remember that for positive angle measures, we measure in the counterclockwise direction. If we're looking at a negative angle measure, like we are in this particular example, we're going to measure in the clockwise direction. So that means if we start along the positive x-axis and we move in this direction, this is going to give us negative 3 pi by 3. And if we go all the way around one full rotation in the clockwise direction, we get to negative 6 pi by 3. So that tells us negative 5 pi by 3 must be somewhere here in the first quadrant. So let's go ahead and mark that in. We make note here that our reference angle is pi by 3. We note that the x-coordinate we would get from considering the angle negative 5 pi by 3 is going to be the same x-coordinate we would get from considering the angle pi by 3. That means cosine of negative 5 pi by 3 must be equivalent to cosine of pi by 3. These x-coordinates must be the same. And we know cosine of pi by 3, this is 1/2. And once again, we can use the cast rule just to double check to make sure that the sign of our final answer is correct. We note that negative 5 pi by 3 does land us inside of quadrant 1, and all of our trigonometric ratios are positive here, so we should expect a positive final answer.